History is not immutable. It is not a straight line. It is a tapestry of choices, of actions taken and not taken, of paths followed and those left untrodden. What if, at a pivotal moment, a different turn was taken? What if the British Empire, that sprawling behemoth that once spanned the globe, had never come to be? This is the question we dare to ask, the counterfactual history we endeavor to explore. Imagine a world where the Union Jack never flew over foreign lands, where the sun did not, in fact, never set on the British Empire. This is a world where the echoes of colonialism do not reverberate through the corridors of the present. It is a world both familiar and profoundly different, a world shaped by the absence of British influence. Our journey into this alternate reality will be a voyage of speculation, a careful navigation of historical currents and possibilities. We will examine the economic and political climate of England in the early 17th century, the crucible from which its empire emerged. By understanding the motivations and circumstances that drove British colonialism, we can begin to unravel the threads of history and imagine what might have been. This is not merely an academic exercise, but a thought experiment with profound implications. In the annals of chaos theory, there is a concept known as the butterfly effect. It posits that even the smallest action, such as the flapping of a butterfly's wings, can have unforeseen and far-reaching consequences. In the context of our alternate history, the decision by England to forego colonization is our butterfly's wings. The ripple effects of this single alteration would have cascaded through time, reshaping the geopolitical landscape, altering the course of cultural exchange and leaving an indelible mark on the economic and technological development of the world. To comprehend the magnitude of this change, we must first understand the world as it stood on the cusp of the 17th century. England at this juncture was a nation on the rise. It had weathered the storms of religious conflict and emerged as a significant naval power, yet it was also a nation grappling with economic challenges and internal divisions. The allure of overseas expansion, with its promise of wealth and resources, proved irresistible. But what if those internal challenges had steered England down a different path? What if the drive to colonize had been quelled, redirected towards internal development and consolidation? This is where our alternate history diverges from the known. Our exploration of this counterfactual world will be a multifaceted endeavor. We will delve into the potential ramifications for England itself, examining how its domestic trajectory might have unfolded without the economic and political burdens of empire. We will then widen our lens to encompass the broader global stage. The absence of British colonialism would have created a power vacuum, leaving other European powers jostling for dominance. Would Spain, Portugal, France, or the Netherlands have stepped into the breach, expanding their own colonial endeavors in the absence of British competition? Or would other unforeseen players have emerged on the world stage? We will trace the potential ripple effects across continents, exploring how indigenous cultures in Africa, Asia, and the Americas might have fared without the imposition of British rule. Would they have flourished independently, charting their own destinies? Or would they have fallen prey to the ambitions of other colonial powers, their histories rewritten under a different flag? Our analysis will extend beyond the purely political, encompassing the social, cultural, economic, and technological dimensions of this alternate reality. We will examine how global trade routes might have evolved, how the Industrial Revolution might have unfolded, and whether the same technological innovations would have emerged in the absence of British influence. At the dawn of the 17th century, England stood at a crossroads. The Elizabethan era, with its aura of stability, was drawing to a close. The Virgin Queen, Elizabeth I, was approaching the twilight of her reign. The Tudor dynasty was on the brink of extinction. England's economy was still largely agrarian. The burgeoning merchant class chafed under traditional feudal structures. The enclosure movement was displacing rural populations and fueling social unrest. Poverty and unemployment were rampant, particularly in urban centers. The religious landscape was equally turbulent. The embers of the Reformation still glowed, and England grappled with internal religious divisions. The Church of England faced challenges from both Catholic recusants and Puritan reformers. Religious tensions simmered beneath the surface, threatening to erupt into open conflict. Amidst these internal challenges, the allure of overseas expansion beckoned. The voyages of exploration by English adventurers revealed a world ripe with possibilities. The Americas held the promise of vast riches and untapped resources. For a nation grappling with economic uncertainty, colonial ventures offered a tempting solution. Colonization was driven by economic and political factors. England's merchants saw potential in overseas colonies for raw materials and markets. Colonies provided timber, tobacco, and sugar for Europe. They also served as markets for English goods. Mercantilism justified this economic model. Colonies were extensions of the mother country. Colonization also had geopolitical purposes. Strategic colonies enhanced naval power. They projected influence and challenged rivals. The race for colonies was a zero-sum game. More territory for one meant less for others. This competition fueled national pride and prestige. Religious and social tensions within England provided further impetus for colonization. The Protestant Reformation created deep divisions, leading many to seek refuge in the New World. The Pilgrims, landing at Plymouth Rock in 1620, sought religious freedom. Colonization offered an escape from social and economic constraints. This exodus contributed to the growth of the colonies and alleviated pressures in England. But what if, instead of succumbing to the siren song of empire, England had chosen a different path? What if, instead of projecting its energies outwards, it had focused on resolving its internal challenges and harnessing its potential for internal development? This is where our alternate history diverges from the known, forcing us to confront a world where the British Empire never came to be. Without the distractions and burdens of managing a far-flung empire, might England have been able to address its domestic issues more effectively? Could it have found ways to alleviate poverty and unemployment, to bridge the religious and social divides that plagued its society? Might it have been possible to create a more equitable and just society within England itself, rather than seeking to impose its will on distant lands? This is, of course, a speculative exercise, an attempt to chart a course through the uncharted waters of what might have been. But by considering this alternate path, we gain a deeper understanding of the forces that shaped not only England's history, but also the destiny of the world. The decision to colonize had profound and far-reaching consequences, shaping the geopolitical landscape, altering the course of cultural exchange, and leaving an indelible mark on the world we inhabit today. A world without Britannia, the power vacuum in the West. The absence of British colonial ambitions left a gaping hole on the world stage. The British Empire was a global power, shaping trade routes and international relations. Without Britain, the geopolitical landscape would have been dramatically different. A power vacuum in the West would have opened the seas to other European powers. Spain and Portugal would have faced less competition in their colonial pursuits. Their empires might have endured longer without British naval threats. France would have had a freer hand in its colonial ambitions. Without British competition, France might have dominated North America and India. The Dutch could have expanded their holdings in Southeast Asia. The absence of British influence would not have ended colonialism. Other European powers would have carved up the world according to their ambitions. The struggle for dominance would have continued with different players. Spain and Portugal, early frontrunners in the race for colonies, were established powers by the 17th century. Their empires might have flourished unimpeded, extending far beyond what history records. The Spanish might have consolidated control over South and Central America, shaping these regions for centuries. Without British competition, the Spanish might have imposed their culture and language more thoroughly. The silver mines of Potosi might have continued to enrich the Spanish crown, solidifying its global power. Portugal might have expanded its control over lucrative trade routes to the east. Without British rivalry, Portugal might have established a dominant presence in India and the Indian Ocean. The Portuguese language and culture might have left a lasting legacy in these regions. However, unchecked growth might have led to their own decline. Without external pressure, Spain and Portugal might have become complacent, their institutions stagnant. Their eventual decline might have been inevitable, albeit delayed. The Dutch, with their focus on maritime trade and commerce, were uniquely positioned to thrive in a world without British imperial ambitions. The Dutch East India Company, a behemoth of global trade, might have faced less competition in its pursuit of profit, further enriching the Dutch Republic and extending its golden age of cultural and scientific achievement. The Dutch, with their expertise in shipbuilding, navigation, and finance, might have become the undisputed masters of the seas, their ships carrying goods and ideas to every corner of the globe. Without the need to compete with British naval power, the Dutch might have been able to focus their resources on expanding their trading networks, establishing profitable colonies in strategic locations, and further consolidating their control over key resources like spices, tea, and porcelain. Their tolerant and mercantile society might have attracted skilled artisans, merchants, and intellectuals from across Europe, further fueling their economic and cultural ascendancy. However, the Dutch, despite their commercial prowess, might have lacked the manpower and resources to establish a truly global empire. Their focus on trade, while profitable, might have prevented them from developing the kind of military might needed to project power on a global scale. They might have become incredibly wealthy and influential, but ultimately unable to compete with the territorial ambitions of larger and more populous rivals. Section 4. The Rise of New Powers, Alternative Hegemonies and Regional Players. The absence of British colonialism might have created opportunities for other unforeseen powers to emerge on the world stage. Indigenous empires in Africa, Asia, and the Americas might have flourished, resisting European encroachment and shaping their own destinies. The Mughal Empire might have expanded, becoming a major player in global trade. In Africa, kingdoms like the Asante, Benin, and Congo might have resisted European attempts to establish a foothold. This offers a glimpse into a world where the global balance of power was not so skewed in favor of European nations. Section 5. A multipolar world: collaboration, competition, and conflict. The world might have evolved into a more multipolar system, with several major powers vying for influence and control. This could have led to a more fluid and dynamic geopolitical landscape, characterized by shifting alliances and regional conflicts. Conflicts might have been more localized, fought over resources, territory, or ideological differences. The absence of a single hegemonic power might have created more opportunities for smaller nations to assert their independence. Without British dominance in trade and finance, alternative economic systems might have emerged. The cultural exchange might have been more multi-directional, leading to a richer and more diverse global tapestry. Section 1. The enduring tapestry: indigenous cultures in a world untouched by British rule. The imposition of British rule brought about dramatic and often devastating changes to indigenous populations. In a world where British colonialism never took root, the tapestry of indigenous cultures would have retained its vibrancy and diversity. In the Americas, vast tracts of land would have remained under the stewardship of Native American tribes. In Africa, the continent's rich mosaic of kingdoms and tribal societies might have evolved along different trajectories. Without British involvement, the scale and scope of the transatlantic slave trade might have been significantly diminished. The Indian subcontinent might have charted a different course without the shadow of British rule. Section 2. The Flow of Ideas and Innovations. Alternative paths of cultural exchange. Cultural exchange is a constant in human history, shaping civilizations. In a world without British colonialism, the nature and direction of cultural exchange would have been vastly different. Without British dominance in global trade, alternative trade routes and networks might have flourished. The Silk Road might have continued to thrive, facilitating the flow of goods and ideas between East and West. The absence of British cultural hegemony might have created space for the flourishing of indigenous art, music, literature, and storytelling traditions. The diffusion of scientific knowledge and technological innovation might have followed different paths. Section 3. The Spectre of Slavery, a World Without British Abolitionism. While the abolition of slavery is often cited as a positive legacy of the British Empire, it's crucial to acknowledge the role Britain played in the transatlantic slave trade's horrors. In a world without British colonialism, the transatlantic slave trade might have followed a different trajectory. Without the demand for labor on British plantations, the trade might have been smaller in scale. The absence of British abolitionism might have had significant consequences for the Americas. Without the moral and political pressure exerted by Britain, slavery might have endured far longer in the Western Hemisphere. The fight for freedom and equality would have continued, led by different actors and perhaps unfolding along different timelines. Section 4. A World of Difference, Linguistic and Religious Landscapes Redrawn. The British Empire's reach extended far beyond political and economic control. It left an indelible mark on the linguistic and religious landscapes of vast swaths of the globe. In a world without British colonialism, the linguistic map of the world would look vastly different. Instead, a greater diversity of languages would likely flourish. The religious landscape, too, would have evolved along different lines. Without the proselytizing zeal of British missionaries, Christianity might not have taken root in many parts of the world. The absence of British cultural dominance might have fostered greater respect for diversity. The Industrial Revolution, that epical transformation that propelled the West to global dominance, was fueled in no small part by the raw materials and captive markets provided by European colonies. Without this colonial bounty, the Industrial Revolution, if it had occurred at all, would have unfolded very differently. The absence of cheap raw materials from its colonies would have forced Britain to seek alternative sources of supply. The textile industry might have developed more slowly, without access to vast quantities of cotton from India. The lack of captive markets in its colonies would have further constrained British industrial growth. The absence of British industrial dominance would have had ripple effects throughout the global economy. The Industrial Revolution might have been a more gradual and less transformative process. Without the economic engine of a vast colonial empire, Britain would have been forced to chart a different economic course. This could have led to the earlier adoption of free trade principles, potentially benefiting British consumers. The absence of British colonial domination would have created opportunities for other nations to develop their own economic models and trading networks. Regional trading blocs might have emerged, fostering closer economic ties between countries within specific geographic regions. The Indian Ocean trade network might have continued to flourish, connecting Southeast Asia, India, the Middle East, and East Africa. Technological innovation is often driven by necessity, competition, and the exchange of ideas. In a world without British colonialism, the landscape of technological advancement might have looked very different. Without the advantage of a vast empire, Britain might have faced greater pressure to innovate. The absence of British technological dominance might have created space for other nations to become centers of innovation. The Islamic world and China might have continued to be sources of technological breakthroughs. Section 4. A World of Possibilities, Divergent Paths of Development, and Global Interdependence. In a world untouched by British colonialism, the global landscape of development would have been vastly different. Without the economic and political dominance of the British Empire, countries and regions would have followed their own trajectories. The Industrial Revolution might have unfolded more gradually and evenly across the globe. Global trade networks would have been more decentralized, with multiple centers of economic power. Political systems and ideologies would have evolved along different lines. Ultimately, a world without British colonialism would have been a world of possibilities. a world where the destinies of nations were not predetermined by the ambitions of empire. Section 1. The Global Mosaic. A world of diverse powers and ideologies. Stepping into the 21st century is akin to entering a world both familiar and disorientingly different. The familiar contours of a world shaped by British colonialism are absent, replaced by a multipolar geopolitical landscape. The United States, while still a major power, doesn't hold the same hegemonic position. Instead, it exists as one power among many, its influence tempered by the rise of other nations and blocs. China, perhaps, fills the void left by the British Empire, not as a colonial power, but as an economic powerhouse. Its ancient civilization reinvigorated by centuries of uninterrupted growth and innovation. India, too, stands tall, its vast human capital and resurgent cultural identity propelling it onto the world stage. The Islamic world exerts its influence through a potent combination of economic clout and cultural soft power. This multipolar world is not without its tensions and rivalries. Old wounds, though perhaps less inflamed by the legacy of colonialism, still linger. New conflicts arise from competition for resources, ideological clashes, and the ever-present struggle for power and influence. Yet, the absence of a single dominant power creates space for dialogue, for alliances built on shared interests rather than imposed hierarchies. The global political landscape is a patchwork of different ideologies and systems of governance. Democracies, perhaps more diverse in their forms and expressions, coexist with monarchies, theocracies, and hybrid systems that defy easy categorization. The very notion of a nation-state, so central to the world shaped by British colonialism, might be less rigid, with greater fluidity between cultural and political identities. Section 2. The ties that bind trade, technology, and cultural exchange in the 21st century. Despite political fragmentation, this century is far from disconnected. Globalization weaves interconnections across the globe. Trade, technology, and cultural exchange break down barriers. Global trade flows along different routes. The Silk Road connects East and West. The Indian Ocean Trade Network thrives as a hub of South-South commerce. Technology shapes this alternate present. A decentralized approach to innovation emerges. Breakthroughs in renewable energy and sustainable agriculture emerge globally. The internet is a fragmented and localized digital landscape. Different regions develop their own platforms and online communities. Digital diversity fosters a richer online ecosystem. Cultural exchange flows freely in this multipolar world. Music, art, literature, and cuisine intermingle and inspire. Language barriers are increasingly bridged by technology. Despite our speculative journey through this alternate timeline, we arrive at the present day with more questions than answers. The absence of British colonialism reshapes history, but doesn't erase human complexities. Challenges demand innovative solutions and collective action. Climate change looms large, requiring global cooperation. Shared responsibility for the planet's health is crucial. Equitable resource distribution remains a pressing concern. New technologies offer opportunities and ethical dilemmas. AI, genetic engineering, and cyber warfare demand ethical frameworks. Globalization's benefits and drawbacks are debated. Interconnectedness must create a just, sustainable world. The absence of British colonialism offers new possibilities. Past mistakes serve as lessons for a better future. Our exploration of a world untouched by British colonialism serves as a potent reminder of history's fluidity. It underscores the profound impact of choices made and paths taken on the course of nations. Imagining a world without the British Empire offers a fresh perspective on colonial legacies. It reveals potential for different trajectories and challenges us to confront colonialism's enduring consequences. This journey prompts us to reevaluate traditional narratives and listen to silenced voices. We gain a deeper appreciation for the interconnectedness of human history. History is a dynamic tapestry woven from countless threads, each representing a choice made. Imagining a world without British colonialism holds immense value. It compels us to engage with history as a dynamic interplay of choices and consequences. By exploring alternate histories, we recognize the impact of past choices and the decisions that shape our future. This exploration fosters empathy and understanding, allowing us to see the world through different eyes. Our journey through an alternate past leads us back to the present, a world grappling with colonial legacies and global challenges. The future is not predetermined. Different trajectories are possible, where power is equitably distributed and diversity celebrated. Global cooperation is crucial. We must work together for a just and equitable world. By learning from history and embracing imagination, we can shape a future where humanity's potential is realized.